What's up, Archons? I'm Flightless Pheasant, and today I want to talk to you about my LGS's pre-release experience for the Keyforge Aember Skies set. I'm really excited to talk about this because I feel like it's going to be a good preview for what we can expect from the Last Chance qualifier and possibly even the sealed tournaments when we get to Keyforge Celebrations. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump right into this. So I was having so much fun playing at this event and getting into the new set that I totally forgot to take any pictures. So you're just going to get a generic background. But I'll try to go over the highlights. So this was like the previous Grim Reminders pre-release and the one before it, Winds of Exchange, in that you got 3 decks in your pre-release kit. Kits looked like this, and they came with a Skyborn pin, which is really cool. Although the Game Found also came with a Skyborn pin, so if you got that already, you didn't really need it from here, but hey, still nice to have something extra in the kits. We had 6 players at my event, which was a little small, but we didn't get a whole lot of notice as GG only gave us about 2.5 weeks to prepare, and so that really had a pretty significant impact on who could attend and who was ready when it was finally time to do the pre-release. But I did open some really cool stuff, and just like always, we'll go ahead and go through everything that I opened. So during this particular event, I was actually really torn about what I wanted to do. I did open a Shard deck, which is this deck here, the Orange Adventurer of Magna Angel Sky. Magna Angel Sky? I think I'm going to go with Magna Angel Sky. And this deck's pretty good. I don't know why it gives it such a low efficiency score, because look at all these draw pips just scattered all around. And that's not even counting 3 Skippy the Glorious and 2 Ezra Paws. Like, this deck moved through its cards. And I did find some kind of cool stuff. So I played this deck just as is for 2 of my games, and then for the other game, I kind of combined my other 2 decks. But it has some things I really like, which one of the things I've noticed in a couple decks I've seen so far is that if you can get a Shades who's enhanced into a second house, that becomes really oppressive really fast. And this one was enhanced into Skyborn, which wasn't bad. Also, the Geistoid Shard is ridiculous, and lets you set up for some pretty powerful shenanigans. Although it's a little worse in this set because there's more archive control, but I think that's a good thing. I'm glad that we have more archive control, even if it makes some cards not quite as good. And most of what I was doing with the Shard of Resurgence is I was archiving Crepuscular Rays and Manifestation. And I was basically just recycling Manifestation in order to play the 2 capture pips off of Skippy the Glorious. Or if my opponent had a card with more than 2 capture pips, which did happen one time, I went up against a guy who had a Stratowise with 3 capture pips. Then I would use Manifestation to have all of those captures go off. And this Manifestation had a capture on it already. And then once I had loaded up one of my creatures, usually like a Quantum Mouse or something else I didn't care about, I would use Crepuscular Rays to take all of that amber off of that creature and put it in my pool. Most of that amber having been captured from my opponent earlier in that same turn. And then once all of that was done, I would use Shard of Resurgence to set it back up. I never got to do this, but I really wanted to be able to use Echo Fly to get more uses out of Manifestation, so that I could basically play Manifestation, capture 1, gain an amber, play the 2 capture pips off of Skippy, that's 3 capture, use the action on Echo Fly to get Manifestation back, play it again, another capture, 2 more, so that's 6 capture, and then play Crepuscular Rays. And I will have gained 9 amber that turn, 6 of it that I stole from my opponent, assuming they had enough to make that worth it. I did manage to do some of that, and it is a good deck. I don't have any real problems with it overall. I like the high number of draw pips. I like Quantum Mouse, surprisingly. It was a good way to get Skippy into my discard without having to worry about putting him through play or anything. And I suppose I could have just discarded him raw, but being able to discard him from my hand in my other 2 houses was also pretty useful. Yeah, I think this deck was fine. My biggest complaint, and you'll probably hear me talk about this more over the coming videos, I really don't like Skyborn very much in Aember Skies. It's got, like, 2 really amazing actions, but all the creatures are pretty subpar, And all the other actions that aren't those two incredibly ridiculous ones, those two being Against All Flags and Redline Rotation, both of which didn't need an Amber Pip, by the way. Both of those are way too good to need an Amber Pip. I don't understand what they were thinking, especially with Redline Rotation. I don't know why they put an Amber Pip on that. Makes no sense to me. If you have thoughts, put them down in the comments, but like, I think it was just egregiously unnecessary. Anyway, aside from like those one or two actions, I find Skyborn to be kind of underwhelming, and don't really like them very much, which is too bad, because I was really excited for Sky Pirates. That does not extend to Tokens of Change, though. We'll talk Tokens of Change in the future, and I've got different thoughts for that. But so anyway, that's the Orange Adventurer of Magna Angel Sky. I enjoyed playing that deck. I played it for 2 of the 3 rounds. I won with it once. I lost with it once. It was pretty good. And then the first round, I actually combined 2 of my decks together to make something that I really liked. The other 2 decks specifically. So this is Shiva Zania, Spawn of Koi Scope. I'm going to go with Koi Scoop. One of those. I like the Aquidon here. It's pretty good. Transparency Report is awesome. I'm very happy with it. I liked having 3 Gemcoat Vendors. It's not a great card on its own, but enough of them can get kind of scary. I like Sandworm. Skipper Huko is not bad. I got some use out of that. Vested Herald is great. I love the scrap, choose a friendly and enemy creature, put them into their owner's archives. That's just great utility. And then I use the Mars out of this house as well. Destroy them all. Good, just generally good control. I had a Doctor's Loxifrex, which is always exciting. My creatures weren't too great. Sinwin the Bold can be good under the right circumstances. A number 612 also can be good under the correct circumstances. 2 Crimson Dax. You know, it wasn't too great, but it was good enough, and it did get some pretty fast generation. I skipped on this Skyborn house. I don't even think I like Recreational Jettison very much. I mean, doing it once, kind of fine, but it actually kind of discourages me from forging my yellow key, because I don't necessarily want to discard 2 cards and only get the pips off of them. I mean, maybe I do, but probably not, right? I feel like probably not. I feel like if I didn't have a Count Eris, I was probably going to avoid it. Although I did have a safe port, so it's like, do I want to turn my safe port on so that it does anything? Sidebar, I have a problem with safe port. I feel like it's kind of a useless card because it does nothing at all except generate an Amber until you have forged your yellow key. Or until your opponent has forged theirs, but if they know you have a safe port, they're not going to do that, so that doesn't really count in my mind. Anyway, I think safe port's kind of underwhelming. I feel like it needed the condition that some of the other cards got, like Against All Flags got, where it gets a condition that just says, you know, it would say, at the very end, it would say, otherwise capture 1. A friendly creature captures 1, so that you at least get something out of it, other than, I guess, gaining an Amber, but I don't know. Feels like there could have been more there. But anyway, I skipped on the Skyborn pod, because I just didn't really see much going on there. And I grabbed this Logos pod instead, with Connect to Me Transfer, which is really good. It had a Worm Tunnel. It had 2 Articulated Wrens, which I was happy about. Ezra Paws, Deanimator, which I wanted to play around with. And now that I have played around with it, that is a finicky card. That is a finicky card, but it can do some cool stuff. And a DDoS, which I also wanted to play around with. I ultimately did not use these pods together again, because even though I managed to put a DDoS on a 2-power creature and shut my opponent down for like 3 solid turns, in those 3 turns, I only generated 4 Amber, which felt bad. Felt like I should have been doing more than that. I also avoided this Dis pod because although it probably had pretty high generation and some good stuff, I was sort of afraid of Nefru, because it just feels like that could get out of my control pretty quickly. But maybe I should have not been afraid of the Nefru and just run the Dis pod anyway, because I mean, double Chaunceys with a Gift of Amber and Vapor Imp and Try Hard, like, there's things there that maybe I should have been more willing to use. And then I didn't like this Skyborn pod even a little bit. I am not a huge fan of the Nantucket. And the reason I'm not a huge fan of the Nantucket is because it wants you to have other Skyborn creatures, but it always comes with 3 upgrades. Meaning, 1/3 of your house will not be other Skyborn creatures, and the Nantucket and none of the upgrades it comes with generates Skyborn pips, so you're not getting them anywhere else in the deck either, which feels bad. It means the Nantucket is really hard to use effectively and get much value out of, because you just don't end up with enough Skyborn creatures. Speaking of Skyborn cards that I think are underwhelming, here's Edge of the World, which, to my mind, is just a strictly worst against all flags at a higher rarity. Against all flags being a common that could steal 2, will steal 2. I mean, it might only steal 1, but it could steal 2, and generate an Amber, which is solid. And Edge of the World, which moves a creature to the flank of its controller's battle line. I mean, that could be useful, but it's not going to be... It's not so good that it needed to not have an Amber pip, especially when Against All Flags does have one. And then it does steal 1, which I'm okay with steal 1 without an Amber pip. I generally think that's not too terrible, especially if it does anything else. But Against All Flags existing in the exact same set, in the exact same house, at a lower rarity, and doing more, just makes Edge of the World feel bad. Just makes it feel like it's not a good card. Even though I think it would be totally passable, especially if Against All Flags didn't have an Amber pip. I don't know. It feels like Skyborn was a little bit of a mess, and as a result, I'm not thrilled with the house, at least as it exists in Aember Skies. But we'll talk about Tokens of Change, and I have different thoughts there. But anyway. So yeah, this is what I played. I mostly played the Shard deck. I did notice a lot of Shard decks getting opened. I have heard that the card pool for Aember Skies is smaller than the card pool for previous sets. And if that's the case, it would kind of make sense that we're seeing more of specific rares, like the Shards, than we would in previous sets. But I haven't been able to confirm that yet. I'm waiting for Arcana to get their card database updated, and then I'm going to go through it with a more fine-toothed comb and try to figure out what's going on, tease out the details, and obviously I will have more videos once I do that. So that was my Aember Skies pre-release over at Voss Media. Thanks again so much for hosting us. It was really great to be out there and getting it all put together and played and having a good time. I'm really looking forward to Keyforge Celebrations. I really hope that Aember Skies is going to be the sealed that we're going to be playing for the Last Chance qualifier. And also it would be really cool if it was for the actual main tournament as well, because it feels like sealed might be one of those formats where you kind of just have to be flexible and end up playing a set other than the one you qualified with. But yeah, that's all I have for you today. So until next time, later, Archons.